So, The Force Awakens leaned really hard into A New Hope. And then in The Last Jedi, they leaned really hard into Empire Strikes Back, but also blew their Return of the Jedi load. So I was wondering for this third movie, what's there left to draw inspiration from? And it turns out the answer was Knights of the Old Republic. That's my review.
I have to take your word for that because I never played that game at all.
Okay. The plot of Knights of the Old Republic, this should explain a lot, revolves around finding waypoint markers so that you can navigate your way to the place where the Sith Empire is building their infinite fleets of starships. So, yeah, do you get it?
I heard not so much from Knights of the Old Republic, but this movie takes a lot of cues from a Legends title called Dark Empire, where a returning Palpatine comes back and declares vengeance and uses an
I think that was the Dark Horse comics. It was really stupid. Okay, he cloned a bunch of clone bodies and transferred his essence into them, but they would all rot really fast.
I mean, that still makes more sense than what's going on here.
It might.
So we'll say
it might actually.
We'll save that for.
It might actually
more spoiler stuff. So
be what's going on here. They just never explain it.
Yeah, but
anyway. That's a really backwards way to open up this, considering that we're starting out on non-spoilery revivals. But you know what? All we spoiled was
because it was in trailers and stuff.
Well, it was in trailers, but it's also revealed within the first 30 seconds of the film. So okay, yeah, there's your spoiler warning. We spoiled the first 30 seconds of the film. Okay.
Well, it's literally the first thing that they pop up in the title crawl.
In the text crawl
is Palpatine's still alive.
Yeah,
somehow.
Yeah.
So, but we'll give some very basic thoughts, and then we'll dive deep into spoiler stuff.
Right.
All right. So Ryan, let's start with you.
It's an all right but very heavily flawed movie. It feels more like a Star Wars movie that it's kind of supposed to be compared to Last Jedi, but it spends way too much time trying to steer in a completely another direction that it doesn't have the time or the focus to do its own thing that it wants to.
This movie, in my opinion, is too caught up and distracted course correcting what Last Jedi set out to do.
Yeah.
The original trilogy always had a different director and such for all three movies, I believe, right?
Yes, but Lucas was always behind the helm steering things.
Right. This trilogy, I feel it is very obvious that it was worked on different people with different ideas and what they wanted the series to go into with none of it with no synergy
Basically,
whatsoever.
they had no plan, and they had no plan for hiding the fact that they had no plan.
I'm going
Yes.
to... I hear that a lot, so I'm going to disagree here for a moment. I don't think that they didn't have a plan. I don't think that you set up on a multi-billion-dollar 3-movie series like this and not have a plan, because Disney is not...
The plan was buy Star Wars, make lots and lots of money.
Well, okay, yes, but you don't...
And by no means am I saying that the original trilogy was planned. Because everybody... the one thing we could all immediately point out is how Luke and Leia are related when they clearly, suck face in The Empire Strikes Back.
It's a far more cohesive.
Yeah,
Yes.
but still, the entire reason that Obi-Wan's ghost had to justify lying to Luke about his father in the first movie was because they didn't know Vader was Luke's father in the first movie.
Yeah.
But anyway, I guess the point is that, yes, I agree that things aren't cohesive. I think that saying that there is no plan is disingenuous.
Okay, yeah, it's an exaggeration. They had broad strokes. They had really, really broad strokes, but they had no plan for tying them together. So, yeah. It's kind of like when you set out to write a novel, but you're not much of a plotter. You're more of a plantser, which is the combination between a plotter and a pantser. If you're a writer, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not a writer, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about.
I just laughed at the rhyme.
Yeah, basically, a pantser flies by the seat of their pants. A plotter outlines everything meticulously, and then there's plotzers and plantsers, which are like in between on the spectrum between the two. And they're very
Most people are in between.
yeah, and this trilogy was very much a plantser case.
So, like, I guess I can just go into kind of what I thought for a second. Like, okay, I guess I should start off by saying that I actually quite enjoy Last Jedi, which I know for some people like immediately discounts my opinion, but I'm gonna say
We're not going to talk about Last Jedi specific. We're not going to talk about Last Jedi for very obvious reasons.
Well, I know, but it's you can't. Here's the thing.
Well,
I
no,
don't think you
we
can't.
kind of have to.
If we got into it, we'd be arguing for 2 hours about whether the Battle of Crate makes sense, like we almost did on Twitter, Ryan. So let's just like agree to disagree about that stuff.
That's why I'm saying we're not.
Yeah,
talking
like
about Last Jedi.
we could talk about Last Jedi, but let's not debate Last Jedi. Okay.
But I guess
so.
just for context, I did think it was a good movie. I liked it. I think it's one of my more. I would say it's in my top 3 Star Wars, depending on the day, and that's just because I thought that they were trying to go in interesting ideas and break some of the obvious questions that you normally get with Star Wars, I guess. Like the whole point a lot of the times from what they were saying is it's like, "Oh, who's Rey's family?" And the answer that Last Jedi had was, "Who cares? It's not important."
Yeah, it wasn't.
And
I'm gonna stop you there. It wasn't really who cares. It's not important. It was Kylo Ren facing Rey down with a fear that he picked up while he was in her head. He had no way of knowing the truth. She had no way of knowing the truth. But given the circumstances, it was a very safe answer.
well, no, that's not what it's. That's not what the. I'm not just talking about plot. I'm talking thematically. The whole thing about is like the past doesn't matter. Is like a huge, or the past, you shouldn't tie yourself to the past is the more accurate way to say it. And because that's like one of the main things is like kill it if you have to.
I just said we shouldn't debate Last Jedi, and you're
I know,
opening
okay,
up
but
with
it's
something.
important. You can't
hold
not.
on. Yeah, but Ted has to make a point.
Yeah,
and
because
I know.
the point,
it's not his fault that you can't hold yourself.
I'm sorry.
it's,
Go on.
The
Go
point,
on.
well, the point I think is that you can't talk about Rise of Skywalker without talking about Last Jedi because it's they're so at odds with each other. But basically, the thing is that the movie is so. I liked that they were in Last Jedi. I liked that they were trying to do things that weren't just. It wasn't oh, Rey's parents are so and so. The answer is Rey's parents will never know, and she can find out for herself who she is without needing to know that, which personally I find more interesting than, oh, her parents are Chewbacca or whatever,
Hidden script where Chewbacca
Would have been a
is
better device than
father.
this movie.
Ooh,
That's for fucking sure.
So a lot of the backtracking bothered me on that level. I will say the plot's all over the place in this movie. I think nobody can deny that. What this movie reminds me the most of, you say Knights of the Old Republic. I say this is a prequel movie, and I'm not. And this is.
I'll agree there. This feels very Episode 3 like.
Yeah, which in many ways I think I'm less hard on the prequels than many other people are. Like I think that the 1 and 3 are watchable movies. There's fun, dumb action scenes. The writing's not great, but if you're just going to watch a movie where people in space do space crap, then it's enjoyable. And in the same way, I think that can apply to Last Jedi. This is a very, very pretty movie.
You mean Rise of Skywalker?
You mean Skywalker?
Oh, okay. Sorry. I do that all the time. It's really annoying that I do it so often. But I really like the way this movie looks. I really like the action scenes in it. I think that there's a lot of really cool fights, like the fight with Kylo Ren in the before Act 3. I really like a lot of the different shots. Like there's one shot towards the end that I really enjoy, which we'll talk about when it comes to spoiler territory. So, like, I think it's a fun movie and a fun watch, and there are elements of the plot that I do enjoy, but I feel like it's spineless in a lot of ways, in that it didn't want to go through with a lot of things. It just wanted to like have emotional moments and not follow through on them in many ways, and it's not cohesive. I'm not making a lot of sense.
It's a lot like The Force Awakens in a way, I think, where they're overcorrecting for things they know a lot of people didn't like. In Force Awakens' case, though, it was just they were overcorrecting for the prequels, where, okay, we're not going to explain any of the politics because people complained about politics in their Star Wars because they were too rushed in their thinking and didn't realize that it wasn't the politics they didn't like, it was the stilted direction of the politics that they didn't like. So we didn't have a clue, and if you only watch the movies, you still don't have a clue what the First Order is and why the New Republic allowed them to become what they were, or even what
that's always as far as the movies go has been a huge, I don't want to say plot hole, but it's like you need to explain this shit.
It's an important kind of thing that they kind of gloss over.
And if there's one thing I can say for The Last Jedi is that it at least provided explanations for the important stuff that was going on in that film. J.J. Abrams, on the other hand, he's like the opposite of Chris Columbus from the first two Harry Potter movies. Like, Chris Columbus couldn't pace anything fast. Everything was a stilted dialogue.
J.J. Abrams is too focused with his magical mystery box.
J.J. Abrams can't pace anything slow. And if he ever has to choose between exposition and keeping things moving, he's keeping things moving.
Yeah, and this movie reeks with that. Like, dizzying doesn't begin to describe how breakneck this pace is in Rise of Skywalker.
It feels like you can see the places where the first half of the movie has massive cuts. Like, I halfway expect and would actually like if this was the first movie that got an extended cut in the Blu-ray release, because I feel like it needs one.
And to our knowledge, has there ever been like an extended cut of Force Awakens?
No.
Not that I know of.
Well, the novels carry on the proud tradition of having like a bunch of deleted scenes reintegrated into the story, but that's the closest thing we've gotten so far.
But in terms of visual medium,
No.
no.
Nope.
So we might not get something from Rise of Skywalker. Yeah, because Rise of Skywalker, I feel if everything needed anything the most was another hour.
You count the Jabba the Hutt scene in A New Hope.
Are we talking OG Jabba?
Oh, well, yeah. The Jabba the Hutt scene in A New Hope was added back in the special editions, and they just sort of CGI'd Jabba the Hutt in over top of the human actor who played him.
I remember him looking really terrible in that.
Oh, well, they had two different versions of his CG model.
They had the original special edition version, and then like
even the deleted scenes are getting special editions.
yes.
Let's not forget in Phantom Menace how they CGI'd Yoda over his Muppet version because it was a really bad Muppet, and they were ashamed of it.
or as we go on to Disney Plus now, McClunky.
Yeah. Oh god,
Wait,
I did
what?
hear about that.
I don't.
They changed the hot
God.
shot first thing again.
Oh, what happens now?
Greedo now before he gets shot says McClunky for
What?
no reason.
Okay.
That's it.
But anyway, I feel like we can't talk about this movie without spoiling it.
Yeah, we
Well,
have
no,
to
we're going to go into
spoil it.
spoilers now. We're just giving.
Yeah.
Well, hold on, but did Lewis? I mean, I know you said a lot, but like, what is your general thought? of the movie
I gave
before we
some
have to
basic
spoil it?
impressions in scattered bits throughout your explanations, but I watched this movie in theaters 4 times, so in spite of the long laundry list of problems that I could talk for hours about, and probably will once we get past the spoiler mark, I watched it 4 times, and my justification for the expense was we were doing this talk today, so I wanted to have a clear opinion. But that's not really why I went to watch it 4 times. I went wanted to watch it 4 times because it's a goddamn exciting movie, and I really liked watching it, and I loved watching Ray be a badass, and the action scenes are the best in the goddamn franchise. Yeah, I said it, and yeah, I really, really, really like this movie, and I'll be buying it on Blu-ray day one. But it's got a lot of problems. So, can we segue into the spoiler section, please?
All right. So, I guess where do we begin?
The beginning of the movie.
Oh,
and
you mean
this
where
is
the
like
movie can't fucking concentrate for more than 5 seconds?
issue one. I have with this whole setup. Besides the fact that they're just bringing Palpatine back at all, that's like, oh, you guys have no idea what the fuck you're doing.
Nope. And then they have no fucking idea how to fucking explain how he survived.
Well, it's not so much. We can get into like behind the scenes workings on why it was probably decided that way. I'm more talking like within like the story itself.
Well, I feel like it has. I'm not talking about behind the scenes. I'm talking. I do like again. I understand why people say that this movie didn't have any plan because Palpatine feels so pushed into this movie, like, and all of these questions are put into, and Palpatine, like, a lot of the stuff regarding Palpatine, I feel like I only don't like as much as I do because it's so sudden and just in this movie. There's no foreshadowing or lead into Palpatine at all in either of the previous two movies.
The prevailing fan theory is that J.J. Abrams originally intended Snoke to be the villain of the trilogy, but Rian Johnson killed him off in the middle, which, I'm going to call bullshit on, because it's not like there wasn't any overarching authority in these movies. If Snoke was so goddamn important to the trilogy, they
would have found a way to make
they
it
could
work.
have just taken Rian Johnson aside and say, no, we're going to slap your hand away from the keyboard there. You're not killing off Snoke. Or they could have, used the vat with Snoke clones in it and made Snoke come back instead of making the Emperor come back.
Well, I've been reading that the reason is Palpatine in particular was an executive thing from what's her name, I forget.
Kathleen Kennedy?
Kathleen Kennedy.
I think I've been reading that was an executive decision on her part.
Maybe not. A lot of people like to demonize Kathleen Kennedy for like.
She makes a lot of bad decisions. So
maybe. Yeah, I don't really know a whole lot about it, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. But let me just talk about the opening to this movie for a minute, because it's a microcosm of everything that's wrong with this entire trilogy in terms of storytelling. Or I say this entire trilogy, what I really mean is the two J.J. Abrams movies. Okay, so we open on Kylo Ren murdering the shit out of these aliens we've never seen before on a fiery forest planet that we have no idea what it is, and he picks up this item we later find is a Sith Wayfinder. And you can maybe, if you think about it later, infer that the fiery forest planet is Mustafar and that he got the Sith Wayfinder from Darth Vader's castle. Assuming.
Wait, that's supposed to be Mustafar?
Assuming you watch.
No.
It is
No.
Mustafar. It is, and it's Vader's castle. But you would only know that if you watched Rogue One and knew that he had a castle on Mustafar, which was supposed to be in Empire Strikes Back, but was taken out and then put into Rogue One later. And the people he killed, this is the best part, the people he killed aren't innocents. They're like Vader cultists.
you have no idea.
Where are you getting this
How
from?
are you supposed to know this shit? There's no context.
Wait, where are you getting this from, though?
The visual dictionary, which is sitting right next to me. Yes. Yes.
You have no fucking way of knowing any of this.
You have no fucking way of knowing any of
Yeah.
this. And it persists. There's another cult on Exegol of Sith loyalists who are implied to have been the ones to bring Palpatine back. But the only explanation we get in the movie is Palpatine quoting his own line about unnatural powers. But we can infer, based on like his rotted hands and stuff, that he's like undead or a rotting clone like he was in Dark Empire. That would make sense. And it would also explain the glaring plot hole of how, if there were only two Sith Wayfinders, how did Palpatine get to his planet without one of them?
Which way is north?
So putting two and two together in a weird algebraic equation of visual storytelling and guesswork, we can guess that the cultists brought Palpatine back in a cloned body, which is rotting and on life support on Exegol, and he actually did explode.
But how did he survive the
He didn't.
Death Star
He
explosion
died.
first?
He was brought back to life. That's the thing. He said he died before he meant it.
So why can't he come back again next time?
It's so fucking strange. Like, this movie kind of wants you to look at other supplementary material to fill the blanks when the movies themselves just don't really give a shit about any of that, because the most glaring example I can think of is Snoke, where I believe it was you, Lewis, that mentioned during our Force Awakens review that in like the novelization or like backstory, Snoke was there since the original trilogy. But then this movie just goes and says that Palpatine made Snoke.
There was like this. Oh, hang on. I need to mute my mic and cough. One sec. Anyway, there was this extracurricular information or theory or whatever that I read before that Snoke was like in hiding during the Imperial era and just observing things, and he came out of the woodwork afterward to take over the First Order. But apparently that either was bullshit or was retconned, because it's not the case anymore. Snoke is a cloned something by Palpatine to sort of act as a decoy bad guy.
I mean,
Yeah, that's I just want to like hang on that for a bit, because one thing that's going around right now is that people are thinking that this Palpatine's a clone, and it's like they don't say that at all in this movie.
No, he says he's just back with no fanfare.
He's just
or
back.
explanation.
They hint
Yeah,
it.
like-
They hint it with a throwaway line of dialogue. But the reason they think he's a clone is because that's what he was in the comic arc about him
But
coming
that
back.
doesn't. We're speaking strictly in the movie here.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no
There's-
explanation. He's just
There's
here.
no explanation. You have to infer it based on, like, they've got a cloning facility on Exegol, and he's rotting, so it's probably the same thing they did in that last story arc. But, no explanation. And that's why I say the opening to this movie is a microcosm of everything wrong with the J.J. Abrams movies. They want to barrel through to the next cool action scene or the next cool atmospheric set piece or whatever so quickly they won't stop and spend
Give you time to think
spend
about
a
it.
minute just talking about it. They could have explained the cultists, the Sith Eternal cult, those people in the background in the throne room. They are the Sith Eternal cult. They are a legion of Sith loyalists that are native to Exegol and have been building this fleet in secret for years. The people flying all
that
these
would have been
planets.
something great to say in the movie.
Yeah, it would have,
because-
wouldn't it?
Because the whole
Because
final
the
order.
whole fleet thing just comes out of nowhere.
And
It
the
comes out
answer
of
to why
fucking nowhere.
Palpatine can't come back, since you asked, Ryan, is because when Palpatine explodes again, he explodes all over the stadium seating cultists who are all crushed by rocks. So the cult is dead. They can't do the thing again because they're not around to do the thing again, and that
there was
makes sense.
J.J. Abrams for episode 10. There was secretly another cult on another planet that could totally do this.
okay, so this
Yeah.
is why I just want to say this is why I think Last Jedi is just the better movie, because questions are intriguing, yes, but ultimately a lot of this stuff just doesn't matter. Let me rephrase that. It only feels like it matters because there's so much mystery put into it and emphasized.
Again, J.J. and his shitty mystery boxes.
Yeah, whereas Last Jedi is much more focused on, okay, so what's actually enjoyable about this franchise and what keeps people invested, and it's the characters,
And then
really. And they try to do a lot of interesting character work with, and I get that
for a third of the movie, but I won't get into that.
yeah, I understand that a lot of people have differing opinions about what direction they took certain things in, and I understand that that's just a matter of opinion.
Yeah,
But,
there's actually an interesting comparison to make based on what you just said, Ted, and that's the handling of Poe Dameron between The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. The Last Jedi, the focus on Poe was entirely on his personality, his motivations, his tendency to be reckless, and you can argue for hours about whether or not he was right to go after the Dreadnought at the beginning, and whether or not Leia was wrong to demote him or whatever. But the focus in his writing was on his motivation and his actions. Whereas in Rise of Skywalker,
He's just here.
actions and no, it's not just he's just here. Everything to do with Poe Dameron in Rise of Skywalker had nothing to do with present motivations. It was all his past and backstory. You know, he was a
For
Oh,
what
that's a
little we
good.
get.
That's an interesting
Which
insight.
for as little as it
for as little as it
doesn't
means,
go
yeah.
anywhere.
But you know, that's it highlights an interesting writing difference between the J.J. Abrams approach and the Rian Johnson approach, and it's almost a funny one because you know you were saying earlier about the past not mattering and how Rey's backstory really shouldn't matter if she can just choose who to be in the present. They kind of did the same thing with Poe and then ignored it with Poe in the next movie even harder. So
Yeah, and again, not that backstory can't be interesting or whatever, but it was an interesting way to take it, given that this series likes to focus on like, destiny and whatnot, and the idea that your destiny isn't set in stone by what you come from is interesting angle in Star Wars.
The thing is, the disparate elements of the J.J. Abrams backstory focus and the Rian Johnson present day motivation focus can be combined into something really interesting and textured, but they make zero effort to tie the two concepts together.
No, we get this random backstory mini plot line with Poe on that one planet, and then it doesn't lead to anything or matter.
Well, I'll
No.
defend that planet because I really liked Zori and Babu Frick.
Yeah, I like characters in the planet. It's again so fucking breakneck.
I also liked the
like
concept that the Senate passed a law. And why is it that when J.J. Abrams delivers exposition, there's always a monster roaring over it or someone else talking over it? But the Senate passed a law that wouldn't allow protocol droids or any kind of translation material to translate the Sith language, because obviously the only reason anyone would want to translate the Sith language is because they're looking for really bad dark side secrets, and you don't want that shit. So C-3PO, who was built during a time when that law was in effect, can't translate the Sith language. And in just a few lines of dialogue, that says more interesting world-building stuff than anything that this trilogy has done.
And then they go and, effectively hard reboot him to get the link, to get the information, and then they do like this whole thing where it's like, oh, I'm taking one last look at my friends, and then he gets fixed like 2 scenes later.
He gets fixed in a comedy smash cut later on, yeah.
which I thought was funny, but it's also like
what's the point then?
Yeah.
So I said this movie was spineless, and that's the kind of thing that I was talking about. It's not just trying to undo The Last Jedi that bothers me. It's also stuff like they want to have a big moment where, Rey accidentally kills Chewbacca, which when I saw that scene, I was like, oh my god. Like, first off, I was like, whoa, first lightning. Then I was like, whoa, Chewbacca's dead.
And then less than 2 minutes later, oh, he's fine.
I will
Yeah,
say I
it's-
kind of liked that it was a trick. I wish that they had spent more time with the characters thinking Chewbacca was dead before revealing that he wasn't, though.
Yeah. Or if they must, not scare the kiddies because Chewbacca's dead, set it up to where, they plan that to trick Rey into giving into her dark side.
Here's the thing.
There
Chewbacca
are better ways to set that.
Chewbacca being alive wasn't just the developers being spineless. It was a plot device to get Rey onto that ship to get the dagger back, and to set up her confrontation with Kylo Ren over the Force Skype while she's in his room with the Vader mask.
I'm getting increasingly annoyed at. Like I know that ultimately the Force is whatever you want it to be. That doesn't mean you should do whatever you want with it, though.
Okay, so this is actually an area where I will defend the writing in this movie, because the idea that their bloodlines are intertwined and so they have a special connection with the Force or whatever, like, I guess that at the very least, like, gives it a reason.
That's not a bloodline thing. He says it's their bond that does it, and it's like, so what? Luke and Leia don't have a strong bond?
I'll say two things. First, Force bonds and that kind of thing. There is precedent for that in the expanded universe and all. But
This isn't the expanded universe, so I have to take it.
yeah, I
seriously on
know,
the sequel
but
trilogy.
it's taking all sorts of influence from the expanded universe. Disney canon is drawing on the expanded universe hard. The only reason they ditched the expanded universe was because the post-Empire era of the expanded universe was so fucking saturated with stories that they couldn't fit a new trilogy of movies there if they wanted to. But
They could have streamlined it a lot better. And
the
I'll get
second
to
thing
the-
I want to
I'll
say,
get-
though, is that the way the Force Skype works in Rise of Skywalker, and I forgot this until I rewatched The Last Jedi, it was set up in The Last Jedi that they could transfer matter between them.
Yes,
The-
I'm speaking purely about the your bond is so close, your bond is so strong, you have the whole bringing back to life thing, and it's like, I'm sorry, these two don't know each other anywhere near as well as some other Jedi relationships we've seen in this series.
It's not a matter. Hold on. In that essence, it's not a matter of them knowing each other. It's just inherently how close they are.
The Force bond was deliberately established by Snoke.
That just seems, it just feels stupid to me. But whatever.
Well, again,
Al-
it was likely not thought of that far ahead.
It clearly wasn't.
You know,
Because it begs the question. It's like, oh, if your Force bond is so strong, okay, Luke and Leia, they're siblings. Are they not Force strong enough compatible to do stuff like this?
I guess because they're not. It's the bloodline thing that they brought up is also
Which is stupid.
Yeah,
'cause then
there's something. It's treated as something a little more mystical than a simple brother-sister
I
relationship.
know it's just one of those. You need to explain that better if you want that to be the case.
Yeah.
Well, again, if this movie had an extra hour, they could have.
I mean,
Although-
I
But
don't
again-
know how much extra explanation would have helped. To be fair,
No,
'cause
but
it's-
things could have been. But you could have done more with a. You could have done more with a better pace. Because that's ultimately what kills this movie for me. Because I'm just going to say right now, this is the worst. This is the worst of the new trilogy for me. Like Rise of Skywalker.
I
is
still
easily
say
the
it's
worst.
Last Jedi, but
I like Force Awakens and Last Jedi more.
I
than
would
this movie.
agree. Not that I'm saying it's a bad movie because it's still a fun
Yeah,
watch.
and that's kind of the weird thing. Yeah, because I did enjoy myself watching this film. Like, don't get me wrong. I think it's the best looking of the new trilogy easily, and I love the set pieces that are there. That's fine. But this pace kills the narrative. And it's like, besides, again, we're going to throw around the word course correcting a whole bunch tonight. This movie is ultimately hindered by that, while at the same time trying to tell its own story in the span of 2.5 hours, which I know in other instances that's like more than enough time, but it's like for this movie is trying to fix what Last Jedi set up while also trying to wrap things up, and it tries both.
It also tries to
succeedingly.
introduce entirely new things, which irritated me in certain ways. Like, for
Yeah.
example, Rose Tico, a lot of her screen time was cut because she had a lot of Leia scenes that just weren't working out. Because, well, we'll get into that. But Rose Tico was sidelined, and they introduce a new sidekick for Finn halfway through the movie who doesn't have nearly enough screen time to actually be a character.
I mean, she was cool. Like I'm gonna
she's fine, but she doesn't.
And she's also implied to be like Lando's lost daughter who was kidnapped as a child and turned into a stormtrooper.
When do they imply that?
At the
'Cause I
very
don't
last
remember
second
that.
of the movie where they have
very
a
end.
talk and they never actually.
between the two.
But it is confirmed that Lando, the reason he was still on that desert planet was because his kids were taken by the First Order and made stormtroopers, and Jaina
Wait,
is
when do they say that?
They don't say it in the movie, is the thing. They don't say that in the movie, but it is confirmed canon. So Lando's daughter shows up halfway through the last movie in this trilogy of trilogies, and it's like the movie literally ends on, let's find out more about this. Okay, if episode 10 turns out to be the Jana Calrissian trilogy, then sure, that'll be
I would
worth.
prefer whenever they eventually get to episode 10, which they are at some point because it's fucking Disney. No, don't tie it to fucking anything. Start over. Start from scratch.
No, let's jump forward 10 years and make it about Jedi Master Finn teaching Jedi.
Do you remember?
Jana.
Do you remember the Force sensitive children at the end of Last Jedi?
Never gets mentioned again.
What happened to them?
Remember how the lightsaber got destroyed? Oh, we fixed it off screen.
Well,
It's fine.
I hope they fixed it off screen and didn't wait a year to fix it. Like Kylo Ren waited a year to fix his goddamn mask, Why?
Okay, I mean, granted, it's more symbolic that it's like, okay, they just don't want to bring up
Well,
anything
the
that
real
happened.
reason the real reason they fixed that lightsaber is because this is another thing that it would have been really great for the movies to explain. But the First Order kind of turned the lightsaber crystal planet into a death weapon, and it got blowed up. So
Wait, the Starkiller base.
Starkiller base is
was
Ilum, yeah. In Fallen Order, you even visit Ilum and see it sort of taking the shape.
That would have been nice to know.
Yeah, it would have been nice to know, but like I didn't know it until I picked up this visual dictionary
I
thing.
guess it makes sense in the sense that that's how they power the laser, but
Yeah, but it would have been nice to have known that was
I'm
the
not
thing in
gonna.
the first place. But
I'm not gonna get caught up in those kind of details. If Ray makes sense, if there's another lightsaber, there's another lightsaber.
It's a really interesting story element because it was a really important planet to the Jedi, and then this Sith-aligned Empire just gave one last fuck you to the Jedi Order by turning it into a planet killer weapon. So yeah, that's really fun, but it never comes up in the movies.
no.
If they could have brought it up. In fact, they had a perfect exposition avenue for it because Finn would have reason to know that, but they don't.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of Finn and knowing things, it kind of irks me in this movie that Finn's entire role is to magically know things and drive the plot forward to somewhere new.
They're following up. They're following up on something that JJ set up in the first movie that we all kind of figured, because one of the things that we questioned is whether or not Finn was force sensitive,
Which is a fine avenue to go. Which is a fine avenue to go down. Do something with it.
Do something with it, and maybe
Yeah.
not the least possible subtle way of doing something with it, which is what they did in this movie.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's a good segue into something that I wanted to talk about with this discussion. Okay, so setting aside the fact that lack of explanation for things is just a general J.J. Abrams problem in this trilogy. You remember back when Force Awakens happened and people noted that Rey was really fast to get a handle on the Force, right?
Of course.
Well,
she's great at everything in that movie.
not really. She makes mistakes. People just ignore the fact that she accidentally let a giant killer monster loose on Han's spaceship and almost got everyone killed. But, setting aside that, the Force... it's not Rey that was especially good as a character that J.J. Abrams was getting at. He's in a real fucking rush to get to the cool stuff with the Force. And the Rise of Skywalker is just him celebrating that he can finally get to it.
Masturbating with force powers in this
It's
movie.
like,
Yeah.
I like that they do some more. It's weird. This movie is so inconsistent because yes, there are cool things that they do with Force stuff, but I also feel like that comes at the expense of many of the other characters not doing a whole lot. Like, I think the whole trilogy has a problem with Finn not being able to do much.
They have no idea what to do with Finn.
Because I feel like Finn is supposed to be, to some extent, the Leia of the trilogy, for lack of a better word. Because it's like, he's there to drive the plot forward. He doesn't... he acts more in action than a little bit than Leia does, but he's kind of dragged along from place to place, I guess. And I feel like in the sense that it's also hinted but never really fully confirmed that he's force sensitive. That's another parallel there. But it's just Finn doesn't have anything to do throughout the whole movie. They killed his boss fight last movie.
He magically feels where to go next, and they do that.
well,
Yeah.
to be fair, Finn does do things in the movie. It's just that in editing, they cut past him a lot faster than they cut past Rey, and that shrinks the significance of what should be really significant stuff. Like, Rey takes down the Capitol. No, Finn takes down the Capitol ship during the space battle. He delivers the killing blow. Janna co-delivers the killing blow with him to the main ship of the fleet that was broadcasting the navigational signal. He stops the fleet from being able to leave and destroy the galaxy.
We'll get to that plot point later.
But it happens so fast.
Okay, can I talk about that plot point though? What is it with Palpatine and the Empire in general having really, really stupidly obvious weaknesses and doing nothing about them?
No, this entire again, I know we're jumping ahead all over the place here.
Like this
but
movie.
It just leads into other shit that I have because the whole thing about like the Final Order fleet existing in the first place is one thing. To me, the escalation of giving all of them like Death Star cannons is like,
well, that's convenient.
We can't. It's not just a matter of that. It's like, can you guys think of nothing else?
The Death Star works so well to keep doing it.
Here's the thing. I agree with John in just that. I'm going to talk about some of the things that this movie did right for a minute. The scene in the planet, the pit stop planet where they get a tune-up on 3PO, where they have the stormtroopers like going from door to door and they're talking about raids and taking the kids. That's like the only time in the trilogy where I thought that the stormtroopers actually had a menacing feel to them, because I feel like before that they kind of gloss over kind of the horror that many of the kids face in being taken away from their families to become mindless soldiers to a cult death army, you know? And I feel like maybe doing something more on that angle, like I'm just making up crap at this point, like I don't know, forced brainwashing or whatever. Like it doesn't have to specifically be that, but it doesn't have to just be blowing up a bunch of stuff.
Some on-screen acknowledgement that there's some psychological horror was nice, and it's probably fitting that this occurs in the same movie where a stormtrooper finally scores a hit on one of the main characters.
The problem with that is it doesn't kill him. The stormtroopers always have this armor on, die in one shot, but then when Poe
did hit something.
Yes, but when a main character gets shot, oh, he's just slightly wounded.
Oh, he goes down, and they could have killed him if they continued firing instead of just saying surrender.
All right.
Yeah.
I don't know why
It's like you have no reason to keep him alive.
So, another thing that I did enjoy, because we're talking about stupid, obvious death, like, weaknesses in their plan. Like, one thing I did like is that, okay, first they think they have to blow up the tower. They send a group of people over to go and blow up that tower. The Empire immediately, like, they're going for the tower. Make it go from somewhere else, and they do that. And it's
the problem is the weakness is still really fucking stupid.
It's a stupid weakness. I mean, granted, that's just a movie thing.
It's not. I'm gonna explain this as concisely as I can, which probably won't be very concisely at all because it's me and I keep talking.
You.
But okay, so the navigational signal is there because the planet's atmosphere makes it really hard for a fleet to take off. But the planet's atmosphere is also a weapon because it's a Sith planet. And the fortress was built with a giant skylight door in the ceiling so that whoever's the big bad Sith in residence can just use the Force and send lightning up into the lightning storm that blankets the whole planet and royally butt-fuck any invading fleet.
None of this is said in the movie.
You don't need that to be said in the movie.
Big fucking problem.
You don't need that to be said in the movie.
The two biggest problems. The two.
Let me say.
Biggest problem. Hold on.
Just this one bit.
Shut up! Jesus Christ!
I'm the one who's
God.
talking first. Can I finish talking?
I was like, no. I just want to say before you, I'm going to let you resume. But Beyonce had the best album of all time. No, I'm kidding. No. The two biggest problems I have with this entire thing is that one that you said right there is that none of that is said in the movie, and you said that you can gather from that just by like I cannot.
Which bit wasn't said in the movie specifically?
The fact, the one that the Final Order Starfleet needs a navigational tower on
words.
That was very clearly explained.
That was indeed explained. The problem is that's still really fucking stupid.
It's stupid, but it was explained.
Why is it only one? Like, why can't the entire fleet have these navigational towers so that they can all take off?
Well,
I mean,
wait, what?
If it's just
that was the point. There was a ground-based tower that sends out the signal, and when they realized it was being targeted, they switched the signal over to another tower. And the only reason that the First Order was able to, the only reason that the Resistance was able to figure out which one, was because Finn very conveniently realized he could just use the Force to tell, which is really dumb.
The problem is, why do you need a tower to do this? You just fly up.
They couldn't. The way they said it is that you can't tell which
magnetic storms and shit. The atmosphere was really dangerous.
There's a ground. Fly up.
Yeah, and then get struck by lightning.
Okay, this is okay. I mean,
Okay, you have Palpatine
Huh?
there. Tell him to move the lightning away.
That's
okay,
I-
that's not
lightning
how the
works.
Force. That's not how the Force
Force
works.
he was able to send force lightning up into the lightning storm to dial it up to 11 and a half. But
I mean, we've already established the Force can do whatever the fuck it wants in this universe,
the
so
other
let 'em do
thing
that.
though is that, and this is like one of the non-expository things in this movie that I actually will defend, is the fact that he was using lightning to enhance to use the storm as a weapon is something that can be inferred through environmental storytelling. Why would the fortress have a giant "fuck you" door in the ceiling, just so that the Sith could open it up and gloat at Rey about how the fleet was being destroyed? No, that door was built for a reason, and the reason it was built was exactly for what Palpatine used it for. He shot lightning up into the lightning storm in the sky, which was established way at the beginning of the movie.
Here's my slight problem with that, though. At the end of the movie, it's all bright blue, sunny, happy, and everyone flies off.
What? No.
At the end of the movie. So
Oh, that's just
okay,
that's just a
what-
Lion
did
King thing.
Did
you know.
there just was it? It's like, okay, was it?
No, that's just
did it
upper
happen to be
altitude. That's just upper
but-
altitude.
don't
Poe is
they need don't they need a navigation tower to get off the planet?
Okay, so why does all the grass immediately grow back at the end of the Lion King once Scar dies?
No. Ryan's right though. It's them ignoring something they had to establish to give the order a weakness that they just conveniently ignore once the fleet's gone.
No, the big ships, the fleet never actually comes into low atmo, I don't think.
Also, the whole they can't activate their shields
Wait,
in the atmosphere.
oh, okay, you know
Like,
what? I never actually thought about their shields, and I don't remember them mentioning that.
They say specifically they cannot activate their shields in the atmosphere, and it's like, why? Why not?
I guess that's I guess something that they should have explained. My only guess is that they're too close to each other. I don't know.
That's the only reason why they lose is because they can't activate their shields in the atmosphere,
No,
and they never
the
explain
reason
that.
the reason they lose is that because the miniature Death Star tech is such a monumentally stupid idea. If you shoot the cannon out from underneath the Star Destroyer,
Which they can only do because their shields are
it
down.
sets off the chain reaction.
And then they say in the movie it's like, oh, we can't fire because they'll shoot each other. It's like, then go to different altitudes
I mean,
or shoot up.
I mean, it's just a cutscene. Not cutscene. It's just an action scene. Ultimately,
You say
it doesn't
cutscene,
matter.
It really
that
does
much.
feel like a video game plot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's just one of those that whole setup is like, once you start asking one question, it spirals into a lot of other questions.
Man,
Well, J.J. Abrams likes you asking questions.
Star
so it's
Wars
okay.
Guns of the Patriots was a real trip, I gotta say.
I love the image of Palpatine doing the
Finger guns.
revolver ocelot fun finger guns.
Finger
So-
gun
Force
lightning
lightning
and
comes
everything.
out.
Finger lightning. Finger
Okay.
lightning.
Yeah.
So, question for you guys. What did you guys think about Hux and what they did to him with this movie? Because I am super conflicted about that.
Waste of
It
character.
was
Waste of a character.
it was
Waste
both
of
a
a
waste of a
character.
character and extremely funny. So
I mean, I laughed when they killed him, but I feel like the tension between Hux,
And
one of
Ren.
my favorite scenes in Last Jedi is Hux staring at Kylo Ren on the ground, and he's staring at that gun, and he's like, I can do it right now, I can kill him and be in charge. But he waits too long, and he gets back up, and then he just kind of snivels back into, his normal role.
he
here's
could
the
have
thing,
been a worm tongue, but instead he was a punchline.
But I
Yeah.
guess the thing is, I expected him to double cross Kylo Ren. I think him helping the Resistance is I don't know. I felt like it was
doesn't make
disappointing.
any sense.
Well, it makes
character-wise.
sense if his only thing was that I'm tired of this and I just want Kylo
here's
Ren
the
to
thing.
die. But
Conceptually, it makes sense, but like many things in this movie, it's over so goddamn quick fire that you don't have time to think about it.
it kind of just felt like it was just a loose end that they had to tie up, and there wasn't a lot of time.
There
he's
wasn't
got-
a satisfying way to do it, so they made it.
Even the reveal itself was treated as a joke, with Poe being like, "I knew it," and Finn's like, "No, you didn't."
Yeah. So it's like because I feel like he's actually relatively threatening at certain points in the 7 and 8.
In 7 and 8, he's like, he's like the
He-
wild-eyed.
he's the Moff Tarkin of the group.
He's
effectively.
like the wild-eyed fanatic of the First Order. Like he's staring at the Star Killer base beam as it fires with such intensity that it's like, wow, this guy's really deep in the Kool-Aid. But
Well, that's why I'm saying he's the Moff Tarkin of the group.
yeah,
Yeah.
well,
He's-
Moff
he's-
Tarkin was more dignified.
Well, yeah, I mean, in terms of context of his role within.
Right. Yeah, because the new
Order.
the new guy they bring in for this one, I got more Tarkin than
Yeah,
Hux.
Admiral Pride.
And I have to say, Pride. There you go. And you
The
know, I
llama
like
nose there,
Pride.
JJ.
I liked
like,
him,
I-
but I felt like
I
he
liked
kind of came
Pride.
out of nowhere.
Yeah, he needed to be something that was established in Force Awakens because
I get the feeling that they might have considered using Thrawn there and then realized he's got to be too goddamn old by this point.
Yeah, it's just I think there could have been more to it. Like I think that if they wanted, I don't know, it was just disappointing because I liked the character, like, and they could have done more with him. I don't know. I'm just conflicted about that because on the other hand, I did almost laugh out loud.
I guess you could
in the
say.
theater when it happened.
I guess you could say Hux is like Boba Fett, but better.
I'm...
I'm-
The difference is, people. And obviously today it's like, oh, Boba Fett's such a badass and he does all this stuff on the side and all that. But in context of the movies, he's not a major character, Boba.
Yeah.
Boba, no, he's not.
no.
So I think there's a difference in that regard.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I guess this movie's Boba Fett would be Poe's girlfriend or whoever she is.
Yeah.
Which I gotta say, I'm a little bit disappointed in. Well, I mean, she's a decent enough character on her own, but I'm kind of disappointed with what they did with Finn and Poe's relationship in this because it felt like they were very specifically trying to ungayify them, for
That-
lack of a better word.
That's I didn't quite see that. I think that's sort of like being read into it by the people who got really into the Finn and Poe perceived shipping, which I never really saw. But
Yeah, I never really saw that.
I have
either.
to I have to agree on that one. I didn't really get that from them.
there's something weirder there going on though. It's because like, all right, whether you see it as shipping or not, Finn and Poe were written as being like really good like buddies, friends. Like there was the beginning of a beautiful friendship here. But here a year later it's like Finn is all suspicious or at least playfully suspicious of all the shifty stuff you do. You know? Like where did you learn to do that? Where did you learn to do that? It's like
They bicker. It's weird. They're friends, but they also bicker like an old married couple.
yeah.
It also bothered me with the look at how straight Poe is. He likes women so much, and it's just I don't know. Considering that they were leaning.
No.
So
I
hard
didn't.
into-
I didn't read that. But maybe this is mostly because I've already been acquainted to Captain Jack Harkness and Doctor Who. But like, just because like you're obviously macking on a woman doesn't necessarily mean you won't obviously like hit on a guy later on. Because that was Jack Harkness's thing, and in a lot of ways, Poe and Harkness are kind of similar characters.
I guess it's that Poe is a relatively like sexless, and by that I mean not interested in romance.
It
at
was
all
kind of just like.
kind of character in 7 and 8, and here he's a giant horn dog.
Well, I wouldn't
So-
say he's a giant horn dog. He has this one sort of jokey "I'm gonna hit on you now" set of interactions with Zori specifically, where
Which may not even be a romantic thing. It's just
it's like they're like old friends. So it might
Yeah,
just
and
be
he's just pushing her buttons.
it plays like a running joke between them. Like across the room, he like gives her a look and she immediately shakes her head and he shrugs and it's like, oh, business as usual. It might just be like how they celebrate a victory. He hits on her and she shoots him down. You know, it's a playful thing. That's how I read it. But you know,
I just, I don't know. I felt like I wish there was more interaction with the characters. Is the thing?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean, they're too busy all jumping around.
this movie is 2 hours long, and it feels like it should be like Lord of the Rings extended edition length.
like Rey. Like I mean, I liked that Rey and Poe finally got to interact because they didn't really do that.
They
at all
literally
in the-
introduced each other to each other at the end of The Last Jedi. That was their first interaction.
Yeah. So I like that they had they fought a lot. Like I did like that angle, but it doesn't feel like I felt like they didn't really expand on any of the existing relationships at all. Like I felt like
No.
Finn and Rey didn't really go anywhere. It's just like Finn is just worried about Rey, and Rey's too caught up in plot to notice what's going on.
If it was their intention to have Finn, Rey, and Poe to be the next Luke, Leia, and Han, they missed a lot of beats. Because by the end of this, like
I don't know what the relationship status is between the three of them.
even then, like it's also like going back to when they were memory wiping 3PO. It's like taking one last look at my friends. I was like, we barely see them together.
I think it's meant to be like a little bit of a dissonance between 3PO's perception of things and their perception of him, because up until that point in the movie, they're kind of treating C-3PO like garbage.
Well, that's just par for the course for him.
Yeah, I know.
But I mean, I guess here's the thing: Finn, I think, works well as a linchpin between the characters, because we get in previous movies we get a good idea of how Finn and Poe interact, and we get a good idea of how Finn and Rey interact. But
it's Rey and Poe that aren't quite so connected.
I mean, I get that, yeah, and so the thing is that we don't see Finn and either of the two, like, we don't see them like
Group
I don't feel
dynamic.
like we have any really good like moments between the two of them. They try. Like, there's some points where Rey's like, I don't know what's going on, I'm scared, and then Finn's like, it's gonna be okay, it's gonna be fine. But I feel like they have that scene like at least 2 times, and they don't.
It's supposed to imply that Finn has some understanding of it because he's realized he's force sensitive and will have to deal with these things on his own. But I will say,
I just took it as like he's just trying to like be there for her. But,
on the subject of Rey and Poe, I did like where their relationship started in this movie, and I kind of could have seen it going somewhere interesting if they'd, dwelt on it at all. And that's, Poe is out there doing all this daring shit to complete missions for the Resistance, and then when he gets back, he's like super frustrated with Rey for being stuck in training this whole time, because we could really use a badass Jedi out there. And Finn is kind of like, he's not wrong.
I feel like they don't elaborate on that at all, though.
They
is
don't,
the thing,
yeah, and
'cause
it's the J.J. Abrams problem. The man can't pace character progression for shit.
It's yeah. Can we talk about some of the pretty effects in this movie that I liked? Because, like, there's the scene at the end where she's lying on the ground and the lightning is, like, flashing over her face, and it's, like, shadowing her face from different angles. That was a really pretty shot.
Yeah, it
I
probably
liked that
gave
shot.
people seizures like all the other
Oh,
lightning
yeah,
stuff
no, there
did.
were warnings.
Yeah, there were
before-
warnings, and there were actual cases where all the strobe lighting and the lightning exegol scenes gave people seizures, and people ignored the warnings because they really wanted to see Star Wars. It's like, yeah, maybe.
At least they gave the warning, though, because
Well,
for
yeah.
Incredibles 2, they had a scene where that could give that.
They didn't have that
probably
warning.
could have.
Yeah,
not as far as I remember. and
at least not
it
as
was-
obvious a warning. But yeah, this is a really seizure-tastic Star Wars movie. So in any case, yeah,
That scene was pretty. I really liked the lightsaber fight on the ruins of the Death Star. I thought that was really cool. I liked that. Like they were fighting. It reminded me a lot of the lightsaber fight in Episode 3 on the lava, but with water instead. Like, I feel like that's what they were going for. But the thing is that the lava in that was just basically, so we can jump from rock to rock. They didn't, like, interact with it at all. Like, the water actually fought against them as much as they fought each other, which I thought was
sort of. I'd take points away from that sequence, though, because it's just them kind of walking down a straight line, and they're not doing a whole lot of striking of each other.
Their lightsaber combat is really goddamn basic, because Rey's combat style is really basic, and Ren is trying to recruit her, not kill her. So,
So it leads to a character-driven fight for sure, but at the same time, it's visually kind of meat and potatoes compared to stuff we've seen before.
a little bit.
I thought it was cool, but I can understand
I understand why it's choreographed the way it's choreographed, because it's the natural end of how all of Rey's lightsaber duels and fights so far in the trilogy have been choreographed. In the first two movies, which take place like within the same few days, and she's just picked up a lightsaber, she's really bad at it. She's swinging wildly. She's really rough and improvises most of her fights.
I'd agree more if we didn't have the throne room fight scene thing in Last of the Jedi, where she and Ben are really fucking good.
No, Ben is really good. Rey is terrible in that fight. She is awful. She is all over the place. She's over swinging all the time. She gets kicked to the floor and has to get up, and then she only really makes kills on single opponents at once, while Ben's over here 5 feet away taking on like half the universe at the same time and pulling all these fancy moves and shit.
Okay. Can I, speaking about her fight style, can I say that two things that I'm kind of disappointed in Rey's. I think that there could have been more cool stuff that Rey could have done in this movie, because, there's the scene with Dark Rey, which I'm fine with it being, a really short thing. It's a little annoying that they make a new lightsaber that actually kind of looks cool. It's cool in the same way that Kylo Ren's lightsaber is cool, in that it's stupid, but it's also cool.
I dislike that scene because it's so obviously, it's like, hey, you remember that one scene in Empire Strikes Back? Well, let's just do it again.
I think everybody came into that movie because that was something they dropped in a trailer.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
we
all
all just kind of.
It's all what we expected,
we all
but that doesn't
figured.
make it any better.
No, it's like we all figured it was like a Force vision.
Yeah, but it's
shit.
just, I would have liked her to, I didn't expect her to use that kind of lightsaber. I really wanted her to dual wield, because they establish her having two lightsabers. Gee, Rey, why does your mom let you have two lightsabers?
I would have liked it if they, since she has the staff thing from Force Awakens, why don't they give her a double-edged one?
Yeah, give her a Darth Maul stick.
I really kind of wanted that too, and I
On the subject of the staff, I really like that she goes through the trouble of lugging that goddamn thing around, even though she has a lightsaber, just so she has a non-lethal option for fighting.
Another thing that I like about it is that they establish that she doesn't view the lightsaber as hers, which I think is an interesting character point for her. That's not really dwelled upon because we can't have that.
I really wish we could have seen her actually fighting with her own lightsaber, rather than just seeing her turn it on one time in the final scene.
What does yellow mean for
lightsaber? Yellow lightsabers, that's, okay, lore stuff. There's 3 classes of Jedi. There's the Guardians, who are the sword fighters. There's the Consulars, who are the Force fighters. And then there's the Sentinels, which I like to think of as Jedi with benefits. They're the Jedi who go out of their way to learn street skills and random talents, like being good with machines, or learning how to actually use a blaster.
Oh, okay. I always took lightsaber colors like mood rings.
or lantern core stuff.
Yeah. So the Guardians are blue, the Consulars are green, and the Sentinels are yellow. We've never actually seen a Sentinel in the movies, but Rey fights pretty much like I would imagine a Sentinel would fight.
Okay, so that was neat. Is her lightsaber at the end a dual-wielded lightsaber?
It doesn't look long enough to be a dual blade, but she might construct a dual-bladed lightsaber later on.
Okay, but yeah, I want her to dual wield, because why are you gonna give her 2 lightsabers and not have her dual wield? Come on.
Well,
that would have been so cool.
So she could force teleport one to Ben when he needs it.
Okay, actually, that reminds me. The biggest missed opportunity in this movie is they don't do anything with the Knights of Ren.
Yeah,
and that's really
In
disappointing.
the entire trilogy, they've
okay,
never done anything
you know what?
with them.
I'm gonna bust out the visual dictionary here so we can I can
God
tell you
damn it.
just how much.
The more you mention that thing, the angrier I get
Just
at
how
this
much.
film.
It's $40 if you want to get it.
It's actually like 20 or something. But here's the thing.
Hold on, I thought it was
You might be
hold
thinking
on.
of the complete visual dictionary, which is like all the visual dictionaries in one volume. But, okay, Knights of Ren. The scattered settlements of the unknown regions and adjacent border territories tell cautionary tales of dangers lurking in unmapped space. Local folklore has warned for centuries of marauders known as the Knights of Ren. Since the rise of the First Order, myth has become reality. Whether or not this gang of dark warriors are truly connected to that ancient tradition, or are wrapping themselves in the name and reputation of legends, is not known, nor consequential, for whatever their origins, they are a force to be reckoned with. The Knights were gifted to Ben Solo by Snoke, who promised the fallen Jedi apprentice powerful followers if he proved worthy. After a grueling trial, Kylo Ren emerged to lead them. Also, they're force sensitive, but to a stunted degree. It's implied in the visual dictionary that previous generations of the Knights of Ren were actually more force sensitive. There you go.
So
who cares?
Also, there's profiles on every individual knight in there.
Jeez, Wikipedia's official now.
It would have been nice for the movie to do
To be
all that.
fair, to be fair to the visual dictionary thing is a proud, time-honored tradition of Star Wars that goes back to the original trilogy, where all the stuff that doesn't get explained in the movie gets painstakingly explained, like who the fuck those white-faced bastards in the Emperor's throne room were. But it's just painful in Rise of Skywalker's case because we don't even get explanations for the stuff that should be explained in the movie. So yeah.
So, it's just like they all have their own cool weapon, and then it's like they all just stand around.
There should
Kylo
have
Ren
been
at the
more
end.
fights throughout the movie that involved one or more of the Knights of Ren. Finn should have had a fight with the Knights of Ren, where he shows off that he's better at melee now.
Yeah,
Because
like,
we killed off his rival in the last movie when she didn't get to do fucking anything.
God, I cannot believe fucking Phasma is gone. Like, just
No,
like that.
Phasma is a worse Boba Fett.
Yeah, like, absolutely fucking waste of a concept.
Phasma. That's one thing about Last Jedi I didn't like is that they threw away Phasma. Phasma should have had a cooler fight and a better death. I would have been okay with her dying in Last Jedi, but she needed a better end.
She gets killed.
It was so. Here's the because I was certain they were going to bring Phasma back at the end of after Last Jedi
what?
because of just how unremarkable her
She
death was.
she fell into an explosion.
That didn't stop the Emperor.
The Emperor is a Sith Lord. Phasma is just a chicken armor.
The Emperor not only survived getting thrown down the Death Star,
Which also blew up.
ventilation thing. That thing blew up and fell into
Well,
the
to be fair,
atmosphere.
if he had survived his fall, he did have time to escape because Luke had time to drag his dying father all the way to an escape shuttle. But
Yeah, like special edition in a future release, you'll see Palpatine dragging his feet behind Luke as he's dragging.
John, you toss him down the pit, he explodes, and then you just hear as Luke's dragging him off my hip.
But like I said, Palpatine's probably a zombie clone again, like he was in the comics. The movies just don't explain
Yeah.
it. So, let's not beat that dead horse too much.
Okay. So
Why not? They want to.
okay. How did you guys feel about Rey Palpatine? Because I found
Oh,
that was
my
so
God.
utterly unnecessary.
I groaned so hard.
I have some extended thoughts on this because
Well, they're non-canon, Lewis.
Rey Palpatine would have been a better concept if Rey was not such a positive character from the outset. If she was more internally and externally cynical, and she has every right to be considering her upbringing. If she were a character more inclined toward the dark side, rather than just getting angry at Kylo Ren because he destroyed the Wayfinder, if she was more inclined toward the dark side, and she overcame that, then the Rey Palpatine story would have been a good overarching thing for her. But instead, she's Harry Potter. Basically, if Voldemort was Harry's father, or if Snape was Harry's father, if one of those crazy theories was right.
Last Jedi established when she was training with Luke that when she was meditating for the first time, Luke criticized her for in his words, going straight to the dark.
Because she doesn't know what it
Without
is, you
really fighting.
dumbass. She hasn't been trained yet.
But no. You can use that to establish that is something Rey has to do.
I know. I'm just
with.
frustrated with Luke Skywalker being a curmudgeonly idiot in that movie.
Of course.
which is, I mean, not to go too much on Last Jedi, but that's kind of the point.
Oh yeah, I know.
of the movie is
I'm
that-
fine with him being a grouch. What I'm not so fine with him being is stupid about Rey.
Either way, they set it up that this is something that we could potentially do with this character. That let's pretty much have her struggle with she's really good at what she's she's incredible with the Force, but that also means that she falls into great risk.
Well,
of
yeah,
losing
and
herself to the dark
it's
side.
one thing to address the dark side as a metaphysical concept, as it always has been.
Right.
But it's more interesting when coupled with personal motivation that inclines someone toward that metaphysical concept. For example,
if in the previous two movies, whenever she starts fighting, she goes straight to bonkers, I'm going to kill you mode sort of.
Oh yeah, well,
she's inclined to be.
Well, yeah, she's inclined to being aggressive. In fact, in the Force Awakens novel, it is explicitly mentioned that she is being tempted to kill Kylo Ren by the dark side, and she turns away from it. at the
Not
end.
in the movie, though, so
well,
too bad.
it's implied by her acting in the movie. The novel was written based on the script, so it's in there. It's just, you have to infer it based on what's happening.
I think you would only know to look for it though if you read the novel.
Not really. It was my assumption that was what was happening before I picked up the novel. It's just the novel confirmed it for me.
Well, I guess you couldn't necessarily jump straight to, it's dark side. I guess you could just assume she's really mad at him because he just killed
Han
Han.
Solo.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I did really like Rey's the final battle between Rey and Kylo Ren. I really liked how it went and how it turned out. Rey is completely the aggressor there, and she's the aggressor because Kylo Ren destroying the Wayfinder sent her into full-blown panic mode, and it was the classic fear leads to anger line in lightsaber dual form, and she went after Kylo Ren hard. She went after Kylo Ren hard, so hard that even though he started the fight not drawing his lightsaber for several swings, he realized he kind of had to defend himself because she wasn't going to stop. so yeah, she loses that fight. She loses the fight. The one fight she kind of has an excuse to win because she spent a bunch of time training between movies. She loses because Kylo Ren is just better than her and more experienced. So their score is even, 1-for-1. I liked it. And it's like, okay, Rey, the hero of this trilogy, she loses one of her only 2 lightsaber fights, and it's the one in the final movie. It's interesting. It's like, okay, she didn't win against her rival. She, in fact, almost brutally murdered her rival when he was distracted, and only came back at the last second because she sensed Leia dying, and it snapped her out of it.
Oh, okay. Okay, so this is another thing, and this is a hard one because it's hard to blame the movie about this because of real life circumstances
Fisher,
regarding
yeah.
like Carrie Fisher dying, but Leia it just kind of feels like she dies out of nowhere for
They
fans.
did. I'm not going to blame the movie for this one because they didn't have a choice.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
know.
it's impressive that they managed to work deleted Force Awakens footage into scenes organically to create new Leia scenes that way. However,
Organically.
you see, I thought of that pun earlier, but I was
What
trying to
parts
resist.
were from Force Awakens? Like
all
the stuff with her?
the stuff on the jungle.
Every bit of footage where you can see Leia's face, and every line of dialogue where you can hear Leia's voice is stuff that was said in deleted footage from previous 2 movies. Most of the footage was from Force Awakens. However, it was obviously quite difficult for them to make these scenes work because the ones that made it into the movie kind of feel like Knights of the Old Republic dialogue cutscenes, by which I mean they're talking to each other while the camera cuts awkwardly between very basic angles. And we've already mentioned earlier how Rose Tico's role in the movie was reduced because she was scripted as being there with Leia a lot. And, well, that kind of didn't work out because they couldn't get most of her scenes to actually work.
Yeah, that's disappointing because I felt like Rose's character had places to go after Last Jedi, and I know that a lot of people didn't like her, but I felt like there was stuff to do with her, and they just didn't.
A lot of people, including me,
So-
assumed this was J.J. Abrams, like trying to fix The Last Jedi and sideline the character that people see as most emblematic of The Last Jedi. And a lot of people were celebrating that Rose Tico got the Jar Jar erase. But it's the more mature way to handle Rose is that even if there were problems with her character, keep her around and do her better from now on. Okay, it's not like she had a super annoying way of speaking the way Jar Jar did that made it completely impossible to write her in a way that could be taken seriously, which was the problem with Jar Jar, by the way. It's because he talks like a frickin' idiot, and there was no way to change the fact that he talks like a frickin' idiot. But, I completely understand that it was the Leia element that led to a lot of Rose's scenes getting cut. And I believe it because the ones that are actually in the movie look like they were hard to get working, Like, I was watching this for the first time, and I just leaned forward with my chin in my hand, and I'm like, wow, I can just hear the editor crying. And not from grief.
Ironically, the one thing that pisses me off about Leia in this movie is the one thing we get that, like, oh, this is the expanded universe movie we could have gotten. When we have the young flashback where it's like they're talking about Luke training Leia.
Oh yeah, you mean the flashback that like single-handedly justifies the decision not to recreate Leia by CGI by giving us a scene in which they do that, and it's awful.
Yes,
Yeah,
but
it looks really bad.
Yes, but we see them, helmets down and lightsabers out, and it's like, wow, this would have been a much better movie to follow if we could have done that.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't feel like...
I mean, as a fan, I'm also a fan of more expanded universe stuff. So it's
right.
So like seeing Luke actually training Leia, it's like, wow, I would have preferred that than this crap.
I think it works as a means of just confirming what we all already thought.
I want to segue into expanded universe talk for just a minute here. Specifically,
we're going to be here all day.
Well, I'm not talking about plot. I'm talking about fan attachment to the expanded universe. Okay. I get it. We've had years and years and years to grow attached to this idea of the future of Star Wars, in which Luke Skywalker succeeded in building a bigger, better Jedi Order with blackjack and hookers. But like, okay, that wasn't the only way it could go, and we've already explored that possibility through the expanded universe exhaustively. So
here's the
hang on, I want to finish. Okay. I know that this trilogy was a very imperfect alternate future with a lot of holes that wasn't nearly tapped to its fullest potential, but I understand the idea of going a different route. And I approve of the idea of going a different route.
My counterpoint is there's a big difference between doing it in books and comics and then getting actors and music and cinematography.
Yeah, I get it. It would have been really nice to see all of that stuff fully realized in cinematic form. And maybe we will one day see that in like a video game or something where they take our fancy PS4 and beyond graphics and do a Jedi Fallen Order game, except set in the previous expanded Legends universe, so we can play as Luke Skywalker's Padawan apprentice in the post-Empire era or something. But I feel like for the most part, there wouldn't be a whole lot of potential in that storyline for exploring new concepts. Because, while that hypothetical trilogy was ongoing, all anyone who was interested in where it might go would have to do is pick up the expanded universe and see where it already went.
Okay, so I agree with you. I agree with your sentiment here. I agree that we don't. I don't think that we needed to follow the expanded universe in movie form. I'm gonna disagree.
All of this is undermined by the fact that
the books.
The trilogy they gave us was highly derivative in its own right. So.
Yes, that's a good point. I'm just gonna say stuff like the MCU has proven that just because in the future that Bucky's going to become the Winter Soldier or whatever doesn't mean that it won't be exciting seeing. Yeah, it won't be exciting seeing.
Also, if you want to use the excuse that people can just go read the books, you can use that excuse for most of the movies made today.
Well, yeah. I'm not using that to justify this exact trilogy. I'm saying I understand why, from a creative standpoint, they wanted to go in a different direction with how things shook together after the Return of the Jedi. Is all.
Okay.
I feel like they went too far, though. They could have used more elements from the expanded universe and turned pieces of it, not necessarily the full thing, but pieces of it into work in. To use that as a better framework.
Yeah, the thing about me is I'm an amateur writer, and my imagination turns into a whirlwind of possibilities whenever I think about this shit. When I watch Rise of Skywalker and I see them finally bringing a Sith planet into one of the main movies at last, my mind, on my way out of the theater, was just a frickin' typhoon of possibilities of where you could go with that for hypothetical episodes 10, 11, and 12.
Okay, so that's actually to try to attempt to lead towards wrapping up, so another hour from now. Where do you think well, first off, I'm going to preemphasize this by saying I don't really think we should get an episode 10, 11, 12. I'd say minimum 5 years. I think we should wait.
Minimum. I would say give it a decade. Let everyone age a little bit. Come in with a better plan.
I don't necessarily think a whole decade, but 5 or 6 years. Let everyone age, but be still young enough that we can bring Rey and crew in.
We don't
to play a part, like, because
not saying we can't do spin-offs or Disney Plus stuff or whatever, but I think like in episode 10 should be a while. Aside from
we need to hold off 10. I say 10 years is a good
But we're
number.
finished the Skywalker saga, so any new trilogy would have to be a completely new story arc about a completely new thing. I think personally that they should start off with a trilogy where Finn is the protagonist, because that would be a good payoff. But
so like what kind of visual tone do you think they should go? Because I feel like part of the thing is that I think people wanted more Jedi stuff in the sequel trilogy 7, 8, 9. I feel like people thought that there should be more.
Well,
there should be more Jedi fights and things like that. Maybe not like
since we're already going
but
kind of derivative anyway. I think they should like draw some influence from how Luke Skywalker's version of the Jedi Order was handled, and mix it up and see where it could go if it was taken in a different direction. Okay, here's the thing. They have these ancient Jedi texts from Ahch-To, that island planet Luke was hiding on, that, according to the visual dictionary here, Luke actually gathered during his journeys throughout the galaxy, rather than on that specific planet. So, one of the things that they have from these texts is all this philosophy from the Jedi's predecessors, who were much less about the light side of the Force as the central pillar of their philosophy, and more about balance in the Force. So, we could not just derive stuff from Luke Skywalker's Jedi Order, but also from Dawn of the Jedi, which is actually a pretty interesting expanded universe subset of stories. There aren't that many stories in that side of the expanded universe, because it was introduced, I think, fairly close to Disney getting their hands on the franchise. So,
personally speaking, whenever we do get to 10, 11, 12, I want something completely different.
Yeah.
You need.
That's
and we're done with the big galactic war, resistance, blah blah blah. Do something different.
Yeah.
This is like I don't care for anything that happened in this trilogy. Like, I really don't. Like,
I'm with John.
I'm pretty sure that is. You can say I have a bit of a bias towards the original trilogy, but I feel I've gained nothing watching.
You know
this,
what?
Like,
Same.
at all. Like, I liked Adam Driver, like, as Kylo Ren. No doubt.
No,
Like,
the
I thought
actors
he
were
was,
totally fine for the most
Kylo-
part.
I liked.
Setting aside the plot, though, Kylo Ren is still one of the most interesting characters in the goddamn franchise.
it's the character. I feel like it's a testament to the actors' performances in that, despite so many missed opportunities with character growth and interaction, I still find Rey, Poe, Finn, and Kylo Ren really engaging to watch and really interesting as characters. I want them to, like, I don't think that this should be necessarily what they do in 10, because I feel like I agree that they should do other stuff, and if these guys are in it, it should be played down a bit, but I really want to know more about those characters and how they tick, because what we got, it's not that what we got isn't good, it's that I don't think we got enough.
Yeah.
And I kind of want more.
Well,
I kind of want more. Of that.
There's potential, I think, for a Clone Wars style animated show where we follow Rey and her friends in the post Second Empire death.
If you're going to do that,
era.
then 10, 11, 12 has to be completely new characters and a new thing, and you don't mention any.
Well,
previous
not
at all.
necessarily.
I think then you're going to oversaturate the characters too much.
No, not necessarily.
Well, I feel
but-
like not necessarily they don't have to be mentioned or show up, but I would agree that they should be.
Oh yeah, introduce
about as
new
minor
characters.
as maybe, like,
introduce new
Lando
characters and
was in
focus on new
this.
characters. Yes, by all means. But there's more than one way to handle that stuff narratively. So I don't think jumping the gun and saying, "Oh, we can't have a show and also have movie focus on them," I think that's a little reductive. Is all. But what I was saying is like a series of the stories that they get up to in that post sequel trilogy era would be interesting and would allow us to actually tell the story of how like a new Jedi Order was formed and what Rey might do with it, you know? And that could be very, very intriguing to follow.
Potentially. I guess wrapping up, any final thoughts about specifically Rise of Skywalker?
I mean, again, not that it was a bad watch, because it is a fun movie. It's like, again, it's very similar to me in how I view Phantom Menace, in that it's a fun movie to watch. There's lots of cool scenes, but it's got a lot of problems. You know, I think it's a better movie than Phantom Menace. I think that what it's trying to do is more interesting, and it fails. It has less direction, I suppose, but it also is aiming to do more interesting things. So those kind of balance out a little bit for me. I mean, I still think that Last Jedi is the best of the sequel trilogy. I know that people disagree with me for that. I don't. Whatever you do,
I actually agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, cool. I'm not alone. Yay. But yeah, like, it was a fun watch. I really like the action scenes. I don't know if I would say they're the best in the franchise, but they're good. I like them a lot. It just, yeah, it had problems. What about John? Where you go?
It's whatever. I felt I said everything I needed to say at this point, and again, I feel as if I've gave nothing listening to this, or watching this in an entire trilogy.
Wow, these movies sure exist.
Because it is, yeah, you know what? That's
Yeah.
that's pretty much the best way you can put it. They exist. They are very directionless, much like J.J. Abrams' bread and butter, Lost. And I just, I don't know. I'm very conflicted about the whole thing because I don't know. I just feel that there was. I can't even put it into words. I don't want to put it into words because I think I've said more than enough at this point.
Fair enough.
It was a fine watch, but I don't know. That's how fucking empty this sequel trilogy has left me. Like, I cannot conjure up a sentence or a phrase or paragraph worth a damn to adequately explain my overall opinions of this sequel trilogy.
And that is totally fair.
You know, it had great set pieces. It had some of the best lightsaber action, I think, in the entire series.
Don't
Again,
let the fan base hear you say that.
Well, the fan base can fuck themselves.
They
I don't
really,
give a shit.
really can.
But
honestly.
you know, some of the best set pieces in the series, easily. But I feel that's all that mattered in this sequel trilogy, is those set pieces and not so much how they connect. Especially in
So
this
it's
film.
the Uncharted 3 of Star Wars, is what you're saying.
I don't know what that means.
It means that it's after Uncharted 2, but before Uncharted 4.
Uncharted 3
okay.
is the one where they just thought up a bunch of gameplay situations and then wrote the game around them.
We were talking about this just a couple hours ago. Now you know, when this was recorded in the future, when
That part goes up.
when that part goes up. Okay, Brian, why don't you
why did
say a
Palpatine
thing?
announce his return?
Sorry, what?
That's all I ask. Why did Palpatine announce his return?
Because
Why is that?
he's a dick.
Why is that a Fortnite cutscene?
Zombie Palpatine on his life support apparatus doing the Fortnite
think
dance.
that
doing the
something-
default dance,
you
yeah.
You
Flossing
think,
is flossing is canon.
You think if he wanted to like enact vengeance with a final order, like a big ass Starfleet, he would go unannounced and just take everybody by surprise?
It's just you're in the galaxy, all your monitors and stuff turn on, and he just goes, "I'm back, I'm back, bitch." And he starts doing the.
To clarify that, his plan was to fire off a warning shot at a planet to confirm that his ships had planet-destroying weapons, and then announce that he had a whole fleet of planet-destroying weapons, surrender or die.
Which he could have done after the fleet took off.
Well, he could have done it after the fleet took off. I never said he was smart, but
I'm back, bitches.
the point is, he announced himself.
And then Rey and Finn and Poe got into their spaceship and flew to the space colony Palpatine, and then stopped the Bio Palpatine from crashing into
The
Earth.
point is, he
Bio
announced
Palpatine.
himself because adding the dead Emperor is back and he's about to royally kill you all is it was a good way to add extra intimidation factor to the plan.
Sure, which he could have done after the fleet took off from the
He really
atmosphere.
should have.
Look, he's never been smart. All right. The only reason why he took over the Senate in the prequels is because everyone else was dumber than he was.
Probably got too caught up watching that fucking bubble show on Blu-ray.
The plot of Return of the Jedi is the Emperor sets up this brilliant trap for the rebels, and it doesn't work. And it doesn't work completely independently of him because he wasn't involved in the battle. He was in a throne room watching the battle and trying to tempt Luke Skywalker to the dark side in a completely unrelated chain of events that had no impact on the outcome. So...
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
Ooh. Can I get that on
Wait,
HD?
you mean...
You can get it on HD Bubbles.
You mean that one scene
Oh.
where George Lucas suddenly became a good director for 5 minutes?
What I want to know is who the hell fucked Palpatine? Execute Order 69.
I don't want to think about Palpatine's Papa Balls.
Anyway, Ryan, why don't you go before me?
This is a visually good-looking movie, mired by having to spin way too many plates to, in any way, have hope of having a coherent narrative, especially to finish out a trilogy. Because ultimately, that was its job. It has to finish out this trilogy. And it fails pretty miserably at that in a lot of regards.
Yep.
It's a well-shot movie. But oh my god, someone needs to get JJ away from a lot of his really bad tendencies.
So there's so many plot threads that do a lot of light speed skipping. Also, light speed skipping. I can't believe we ignored that.
There's a lot of stuff we didn't talk about. We're still going.
I thought it was cool. There's nothing saying they couldn't do it. I mean, it's a miracle they didn't
Light
crash
speed
into
jumping
things.
is not like dusting crops, boys.
My biggest problem with the light speed skipping is that ultimately the solution was do what you were going to do anyway and shoot them down.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Well, because they're obviously trying to, get around the light speed tracking thing, which, fair enough. Your solution to that was wreck the other guy's ship, which you could have done anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So light speed skipping as a concept is kind of stupid.
Well, not as a concept. I can see there being situations
enough.
where it would make more sense, but it just seemed to be Poe being super reckless because he forgot that he shouldn't be super reckless after The Last Jedi.
Regardless, Lewis, your final thoughts.
Okay. So, before I get into it,
we're starting the clock at 1 minute 32 seconds, or 1 hour. 32,
before I get
35
into
seconds.
Rise of Skywalker, I want to say that this entire trilogy is a guilty pleasure for me. Like, I have so many problems, and I didn't even talk about half of them during this video. Like, off the top of my head, I could talk about, like, what I thought about... Oh, I say off the top of my head, but nothing's coming off the top of my head. Never mind. But there's a bunch of stuff that we never talked about. There's stuff I also like, and I have something off the top of my head that we never mentioned. Ben Solo's redemption.
Oh,
3
okay.
hours later.
Where it's like, okay, this is like one of the things where it legitimately actually works well with the Last Jedi is that after the Last Jedi basically told Rey, "No, you can't fix him. That's childish romantic nonsense." Ben fixes himself over his grief about his mother's death rather than anything to do with Rey.
I mean,
The
I know we're
whole,
trying to wrap up. I
know.
don't know.
No, go ahead, Ted, go ahead.
Like, one of my hopes for the trilogy is that he just wasn't going to be another Darth Vader.
He wasn't another Darth Vader, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I was kind of hoping he didn't redeem himself, but like I didn't really expect that. I don't know. Like, I feel like they could have done more. They could have done more with it.
Well, yeah.
Like, I feel like it's. I don't know. I'm conflicted about it. I don't have the words to explain that conflict right now, so I'll just pass.
Yeah, the thing though is that I really like it because it's basically the opposite of how Vader was redeemed. Vader was redeemed in a split-second decision to yell a big no and throw the Emperor off a cliff, and he died because the Emperor couldn't shut his stupid lightning off. Why can't the Emperor shut his stupid lightning off? He keeps making that mistake. But like, okay, so Vader had a very specific in the moment reason for turning to the light side and killing his master. Kylo Ren almost dies, and he's just standing there contemplating his own grief, and he realizes, yeah, I kind of mourn my mother, and now she's dead, and I don't know what to do with myself anymore. But wait, I actually do know what to do with myself now. And he throws his fucking lightsaber into the ocean and decides to fight for what his mother was fighting for before she died. He fixes himself.
Yeah, but I'm kind of conflicted on this as well because I like the idea that it takes the death of Leia for him to finally like sort of snap out of it. I'm a little weary of, not so much weary, but conflicted on like the whole Han Solo bit
That was weird,
where it was really, because it totally came off as like I understand like the parallels they were drawing like with the Force Awakens, and that's fine, but it comes off more like, I forgive myself for stabbing my father, and it's like, and in that way. That's what doesn't jive with me. To me personally, it would have made more sense if it was Leia's Force Ghost talking with him.
I didn't get that. Actually, I didn't get like I forgive myself. The fact of the matter is, like, and this was like mentioned multiple times in The Last Jedi, and at least once in Rise of Skywalker, Kylo Ren was conflicted over the death of his murder of his father. Like, he did it because he thought that if he killed his father, he would be able to give himself fully over to the dark side and not feel remorse anymore, and he wouldn't have to forgive himself because you need to feel remorse for that, and it never happened. He unbalanced himself and remained unbalanced throughout the entire trilogy. It just took the death of Leia for him to fully accept, yeah, you know what, I feel like shit, and it's right that I feel like shit, so I'm gonna go do the good thing now. And there. And then from that entire point on, his only line of dialogue is, ow.
Ow.
His entire Ben Solo bit is completely nonverbal, and I really liked that. Because you get so much of who he is now that he's turned back to the light from just his face. And that's important, because you know the old saying about how actions speak louder than words? It's easy to say that you've changed your ways. It's easy to talk about how you're going to do good now. We never actually hear from Ben Solo what his intentions are for after he helps Rey fight Palpatine. He just comes to help her fight Palpatine because it's the right thing to do. And, well, he gets thrown off a cliff. I'm sorry. That was like, the Emperor got one funny moment, and I appreciate it, but, yeah. So,
He probably should have kept the lightsaber though if he was gonna help. But I get the symbol. I'm dicking around, but
well,
yeah,
he probably. Well, the thing is, according to Disney's current canon, and this was never true in the expanded universe, so this is Disney pulling stuff out of their ass. The red lightsabers, the crystals inside them have been twisted by the dark side, so maybe he couldn't keep the lightsaber. I'm not sure.
Whatever.
It's dumb.
It's like I feel like. Sorry, I need to think because I like the idea that it wasn't Rey that brought him back. I think I like that idea because
It's
like I mean they
Well, she did physically.
it's a bit of a romance novel trope about women fixing men through the power of love and allowing them to cope with their brooding angst and all.
Yeah, I mean, I like that she really wasn't the one who did that, though. Like, he did ultimately decide for himself to do that. I like that. I guess I feel like I didn't see Last Jedi to me felt like it seemed like that movie was about him being like he has decided that he doesn't want. There's too much in that movie that told me that he didn't want to go to the light anymore, and that he was a lost cause. And up until the conversation with Han, Ghost Han, Han hallucination, whatever it is, I felt like there wasn't any hint that he had lightened up on that, So
Lightened up.
I don't know. Yeah, so I'm just
It's interesting, and there are some cracks in it, like his mask. But I just really liked the whole sequence. Problems with it notwithstanding.
I'm having a hard time verbalizing what it doesn't even bother me. It's just I'm not jiving with it.
Swinging
I can't
back
explain
to
why.
my final word on the movie and the trilogy, though, like I said, this trilogy is a guilty pleasure for me. I have a long list comprised of nitpicks, problems, and genuine things I hate about all three movies. But I like watching all three of them, and I will probably continue to watch all three of them until my dying day. I'm going to get Rise of Skywalker day one, and I'm going to watch it right out of the box. And I'm going to love every second of it. Because
honestly, that just sounds like me with Star Wars.
It's the opposite of the prequel trilogy. The prequel trilogy was a lot of interesting story material, poorly presented with stilted direction, really, really bad pacing, and some, at times, incredibly bad acting. But it lended a lot of story material to the Star Wars universe, and that story material, in turn, enriched the universe beyond belief. And when that story material was used by other creative minds, say in the Clone Wars series, the results were spectacular. The sequel...
Well, it helps that the prequel trilogy had
The sequel trilogy has all the watchability that the prequel trilogy lacked, and none of the story.
Yeah.
No
direction.
At this point, though, I'll probably watch Mandalorian because my sister has Disney Plus. I might as well. But ultimately, at this point, though, I'm kind of just done with Star Wars.
No, don't be done with Star Wars. The Mandalorian is excellent. Fallen Order is excellent. We have had a very good year for Star Wars. In fact, even if you hate Rise of Skywalker, we still had a good year for Star Wars.
Fallen Order is Dark Souls, but Star Wars, right?
It's more like Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, which is the same company, but essentially, it also has Tomb Raider, Prince of Persia style platforming, and all.
Okay. Is it as hard as Souls?
Well,
game?
no.
Okay.
It also has difficulty modes, so if you want a slightly easier time, you can play Jedi Knight instead of Jedi Master.
There's no doubt that it's a good time to be a Star Wars fan if you're just a fan of the franchise as a whole.
But I'm burnt out.
the main, to me the main course is always going to be the films, and I have to agree. And I'm speaking as someone that I love Star Wars, not diehard Star Wars fan, but I've been watching the movie since I've been a child. A lot of sentimental value, but I'm burnt out. And it's weird that it only took the sequel trilogy 3 movies to do that. What Marvel took 35. Because again, I think it really hurts this trilogy that it felt like they didn't know what they wanted to do with themselves. At the end of the day, whether it was planned from the start like they were going to do this, whether if it was their intentions of getting Ryan Johnson to just like muck everything up in Last
It
Jedi,
wasn't.
for better
Well,
or worse.
Ryan Johnson being hired is interesting because, as I recall, there were some hirings and firings and more hirings and firings until they landed on Ryan Johnson for the second episode.
I was having a discussion with someone offline about this, and they said I would have really liked a J.J. Abrams trilogy, and I really would have liked a Ryan Johnson trilogy, but having them both together didn't really work out so well. I understand that sentiment a lot.
I would have liked the Ryan Johnson trilogy, not so much J.J.
An
Abrams.
entire non-stop J.J. Abrams trilogy could have been the Knights of the Old Republic 2, while Ryan Johnson having a trilogy to follow that up on could have been Wait, I mixed that up. Knights of the Old Republic 1 is J.J. Abrams. Lots of familiar iconography and all of that. Then Ryan Johnson would be the Knights of the Old Republic 2, where we get deconstructive about everything. And it could have been great. Could have been excellent. But no. Didn't get that. Oh well.
Okay, so anyway, we've been on our final thoughts for only 12 minutes, actually. You know what? I'm proud of us.
That's pretty reasonable for us, actually.
Okay, so anyway,
That's it.
I'm tired.
This
is why we don't.
This is why we normally don't do this, and I have no idea next time we'll even be doing something like this because Endgame happened and Star Wars happened, and who knows when the next time we're gonna get something of kind of this level of finality to come out.
Yeah, movies are pretty. I don't want to say bare, but you know,
There's Wonder
there's
Woman
not
in
a-
2020, and that's kind of it.
yeah, and I'm not trying to say that that's a bad movie, but or like that people won't like it. It's not a big event like
Yeah.
a Star
Oh no,
Wars
it's not.
is.
I agree.
I'm looking forward to the Mulan remake because it looks like the only remake in the Disney remake series that looks like it has an excuse to be a remake. So
I'm not touching that
Nope.
one.
For many different reasons, which I will not get into.
Yeah.
Beauty
Same.
and the Beast kind of spurred me off of those, but anyway, tune in next time where we talk about
Oh crap! I know what we're gonna have to talk about at some point in the next few months.
what
You know
What?
what it is.
I actually don't.
It comes out on my birthday.
No, we don't have to talk.
You
about
know
that.
we're gonna
We
have to.
No,
The
we
Sonic
don't.
Movie
No,
podcast
no,
is happening
no.
on my channel, and you guys are all
Oh,
invited.
sure, John. Steal the views. I see how it is. All right.
what a weird movie to come out on Valentine's Day.